Catherine's quiet. Goodbye. The moment that shattered William. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen curtains as Catherine stood by the stove, stirring porridge in a slow, deliberate circle. Her hand moved automatically, but her mind seemed to be somewhere else entirely. William sat at the table behind her, scrolling through his phone while sipping coffee. He didn't notice the way her shoulders had slumped slightly, or how she paused every few seconds as if gathering strength for the next movement. "Will you be home for dinner tonight?" Catherine asked, her voice soft and measured. William glanced up briefly. "Probably late. Big presentation at work. You know how it is." She nodded, turning back to the stove. She knew exactly how it was. For the past 3 months, William had been consumed by his career, chasing a promotion that seemed to define his entire existence. Catherine understood ambition. She had once been ambitious too, before the tiredness began to settle into her bones like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. The porridge bubbled gently. Catherine divided it into 2 bowls, placing one in front of William and keeping the other for herself. She sat down across from him, picking up her spoon with fingers that trembled slightly. William didn't notice. He was already reading something on his phone, his breakfast forgotten. "I have a doctor's appointment today," Catherine mentioned casually, taking a small bite of her porridge. That's good," William replied, not looking up. "Nothing serious, I hope." "Just a checkup," Catherine said. She didn't tell him it was her 4th appointment in 2 months. She didn't mention the tests, the blood work, or the way Dr. Morrison's face had grown increasingly serious with each visit. After breakfast, William kissed her cheek absently and rushed out the door, briefcase in hand, mind already at the office. Catherine watched him go from the window, her hand pressed against the glass. The house fell silent around her, and in that silence she allowed herself to feel the weight of what she was carrying alone. The doctor's office smelled of antiseptic and artificial lavender. Catherine sat in the waiting room, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Around her, life continued. A young mother bounced a fussy baby on her knee. An elderly man read a newspaper, squinting at the small print. A teenager slouched in his chair, earbuds blocking out the world. Catherine watched them all, memorizing the ordinary moments. She had begun doing this lately, collecting memories of simple things like trading cards, the way light reflected off a puddle, the sound of children laughing in a park, the taste of morning tea, all of it suddenly precious in a way it had never been before. Catherine Wells? The nurse called her name with practiced cheerfulness. Catherine stood, smoothing her skirt, and followed the nurse down the familiar hallway. Dr. Morrison was waiting in his office, and the expression on his face told her everything before he spoke a single word. She had learned to read these expressions over the past weeks. The careful sympathy, the measured tone, the way people prepared to deliver bad news as if wrapping something fragile. "Please sit down," Dr. Morrison said gently. Catherine sat. Her hands remained folded in her lap, steady despite the storm beginning to brew inside her chest. "I'm afraid the results aren't what we hoped for," he began, pulling out a folder thick with papers and images. "The scans show that the tumor has grown significantly. It's aggressive, Catherine. More aggressive than we initially thought." The words washed over her like waves. Aggressive, inoperable, advanced stage, limited options, time. The last word hung in the air between them, heavy and finite. "How long?" Catherine asked. Her voice didn't shake. She was proud of that. Dr. Morrison hesitated, and in that hesitation, Catherine found her answer. "It's difficult to say with certainty. Everyone responds differently. But realistically, we're looking at perhaps 6 to 8 months. Maybe less. I'm so sorry. 6 to 8 months. Catherine did the math automatically. That would take her to spring, maybe early summer. She thought of the garden she had planned to plant, the roses she wanted to see bloom one more time. She thought of William, always rushing, always busy, always somewhere else. "What are my options?" she asked. Dr. Morrison outlined treatments. Chemotherapy that might buy her a few extra weeks but would make her violently ill. Radiation that offered minimal hope. Clinical trials with no guarantees. Everything he described sounded like fighting a battle that was already lost. Spending her remaining time in hospitals rather than living. Catherine listened patiently, then asked, "And if I choose to do nothing?" The doctor looked at her with deep sadness. "Then we focus on keeping you comfortable. Quality of life over quantity. Hospice care when the time comes." "It's a valid choice, Catherine. Some people prefer it that way. She nodded slowly, understanding settling over her like a blanket. She had always been practical, even in the face of impossible things. That evening, Catherine prepared William's favorite meal: roast chicken with herbs, roasted vegetables, and homemade gravy. She set the table with their good china, the set they received as a wedding gift and rarely used. She lit candles and put on soft music. William arrived home at 9, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. He stopped when he saw the table, confusion crossing his face. "What's all this?" he asked. "Dinner," Catherine said simply. "I thought we could have a nice meal together." William smiled, but it was distracted. "That's sweet, but I already ate at the office." "Client dinner? I thought I told you." He hadn't told her. Or perhaps he had, and she had been too lost in her own thoughts to hear. It didn't matter now. "Oh," Catherine said softly. "That's all right." She began clearing the untouched plates, carefully wrapping the food she had spent hours preparing. William had already moved to the living room, turning on the television. Catherine stood at the sink, washing dishes that hadn't been used, tears finally sliding down her cheeks in silent streams. That night, as William slept peacefully beside her, Catherine lay awake staring at the ceiling. She could feel her heart beating steadily in her chest, each thump a reminder of time passing. She thought about waking him, telling him everything right then. But she looked at his peaceful face and couldn't bring herself to shatter his world at midnight. Tomorrow, she told herself. She would tell him tomorrow, but tomorrow came and William was rushing again. Another early meeting, another crisis at work, another reason why it wasn't the right time. Catherine watched him go and said nothing. The secret grew heavier each day, but she carried it alone, as she had learned to carry so many things. In the quiet moments between dawn and dusk, Catherine began to understand something important. She was dying, yes, but she had also been disappearing long before the diagnosis, fading quietly into the background of William's ambitious life, becoming invisible in inches. Now, with death approaching like a patient friend, Catherine found herself facing an impossible question. How do you say goodbye to someone who hasn't really seen you in years? How do you make someone understand what they're about to lose when they don't realize it's already slipping away? These questions haunted her as she moved through her days, keeping her secret close, watching William rush past her again and again, blind to the woman who loved him enough to let him keep living in blissful ignorance just a little longer. The clock was ticking, but Catherine had learned to be quiet. And in her quietness, a tragedy was unfolding that William couldn't yet see. Catherine's quiet goodbye, the moment that shattered William. 3 weeks passed since Catherine learned about her fate, and each day felt like walking on a tightrope stretched between two impossible choices: tell William and watch his world crumble, or stay silent and lose precious time they could have together. She chose silence, but it was eating her alive from the inside. The autumn leaves had begun to fall, carpeting their small front yard in shades of gold and crimson. Catherine stood at the window with a cup of tea growing cold in her hands, watching the world change colors. Everything seemed more beautiful now, more vivid. She noticed things she had walked past for years without seeing. The way the mailbox tilted slightly to the left, the crack in the sidewalk where dandelions pushed through concrete, the old oak tree that had witnessed their entire marriage, standing patient and strong. She wanted to show William these things. She wanted him to stop and see the world the way she was seeing it now, with eyes that knew time was finite. But William was busier than ever, his promotion now within reach. He came home later each night, exhausted and distracted, eating reheated dinners in front of his laptop while Catherine sat across the room, words dying in her throat before she could speak them. "I was thinking," Catherine said one evening as William packed his briefcase for another early morning. "Maybe we could take a weekend trip. Just the two of us. Remember that bed and breakfast in the mountains, where we went for our anniversary?" William glanced up, his mind clearly elsewhere. "That sounds nice, but I can't get away right now. Maybe after this project wraps up." "End of the year?" "End of the year." Catherine did the math silently. She might not have until the end of the year. "Of course," she said softly. After the project, she started making lists. Catherine had always been organized, but now her list took on a different purpose. Things she wanted to do, places she wanted to see one last time, conversations she needed to have, people she should call. The lists grew longer each day, but she couldn't seem to complete any of them. How could she visit her sister without breaking down and confessing everything? How could she go to her favorite cafe knowing she was counting down her last visits? Instead, she began preparing in other ways. She organized the house meticulously, labeling boxes in the attic, sorting through old photographs, arranging documents in neat folders. She updated their address book, wrote out instructions for things William had never handled. Which plumber to call, when to service the heater, how to operate the washing machine. All the invisible work of keeping a home running, laid out in careful detail for when she wouldn't be there to do it anymore. She found herself taking photographs constantly. Not of herself, she realized she had always been the one behind the camera, but of ordinary moments. The morning light on the kitchen table, William's reading glasses left on the arm of the sofa, his favorite coffee mug, the view from their bedroom window. Evidence that this life had existed, that she had been part of it even if no one was looking. Catherine also started writing letters. Late at night, when William finally fell asleep, she would sit at the desk in the spare room and write. Letters to William, trying to capture everything she wanted to say but couldn't speak out loud. Letters to her sister, her niece, old friends she had lost touch with over the years. She sealed them in envelopes and hid them in a box at the back of her closet, unsure if anyone would ever read them. One Saturday morning, Catherine woke before dawn with a clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. William was still asleep beside her, his face peaceful in the dim light. She studied his features as if memorizing a map. The small scar on his chin from a childhood accident, the way his hair was beginning to gray at the temples, the lines around his eyes that deepened when he laughed, though he hadn't laughed much lately. She decided then that she would try harder. She would find ways to reach him, to make him see her before it was too late. She would stop being so quiet, so understanding, so willing to fade into the background of his busy life. Catherine made a special breakfast, pancakes, bacon, fresh orange juice. The smell filled the house, finally rousing William from sleep. He came downstairs in his pajamas, surprised to find the table set and Catherine smiling at him. "What's the occasion?" he asked, sitting down. "No occasion," Catherine said, serving him a stack of perfect golden pancakes. "I just wanted to have breakfast together, like we used to." They ate, and for a moment it felt like old times. William told her about office politics, about his colleague who took credit for someone else's work, about the presentation he was nervous about. Catherine listened, really listened, storing away the sound of his voice, the animated way he gestured with his fork when he got excited about something. "You know what we should do today?" Catherine asked when he paused. "We should go to the botanical gardens. The chrysanthemums should be blooming." William's face fell slightly. "I actually need to go into the office for a few hours, just to finish up some things." "It's Saturday," Catherine said, trying to keep her voice light. "I know, but this promotion, it's important. You understand, right?" Catherine understood. She had been understanding for months, for years. But understanding was running out, measured in breaths and heartbeats and days crossed off a calendar. "What if we went tomorrow then?" She pressed gently. "Tomorrow I have that conference call with the Tokyo office. Time zones, you know. But maybe next weekend?" Next weekend turned into the weekend after, which turned into excuses that piled up like fallen leaves. Catherine stopped asking. Instead, she went to the botanical gardens alone, walking slowly through paths lined with flowers that would die with the first frost. She wasn't the only person there alone. She saw other women her age, some pushing wheelchairs, some sitting on benches with vacant expressions. She wondered how many of them were also carrying secrets, also marking time in ways their loved ones couldn't see. The pain started around this time, small at first, easily dismissed, a dull ache in her side, headaches that came and went. Catherine didn't tell Dr. Morrison. She didn't want to start the treatments yet, didn't want to spend what time she had left being sick from chemicals meant to fight a battle she had already decided to lose. She began having strange moments where time seemed to fold in on itself. She would be washing dishes and suddenly remember washing dishes on her wedding day in their first apartment, 23 years ago. She would be making the bed and recall teaching William how to properly fold the fitted sheet, laughing at his frustration. Past and present blurred together, as if her mind was already sorting through memories, deciding which ones to keep close. Catherine found herself drawn to places from their past. She drove to the restaurant where William proposed, now converted into a hardware store. She walked past the apartment building where they first lived, surprised by how small it looked now. She sat in the park where they used to have picnics on Sunday afternoons, before life got busy and they forgot how to be idle together. At home, she played music they used to dance to, hoping William would notice, would remember, would take her in his arms and sway with her like he used to. But William had his earbuds in, focused on his laptop, and the music played for an audience of one. One evening, Catherine stood in the doorway of William's study, watching him work. The light from his computer screen cast shadows across his face, making him look older, more tired. She thought about walking in, closing his laptop, and saying the words that needed to be said. "I'm dying. I have months left. Look at me, see me, remember us." But she saw the stress lines etched around his mouth, the way he rubbed his temples, and she couldn't add to his burden. Not yet, soon, she told herself. She would tell him soon. The cruel irony wasn't lost on her. She was running out of time, but she was spending it protecting the man she loved from the truth that would devastate him. She was disappearing in real time, and doing it so quietly that he couldn't hear her goodbye, even though she was screaming it in every gesture, every carefully prepared meal, every photograph, every moment of silence between them. Catherine returned to bed that night, lying beside William in the darkness. She reached out and took his hand, and in his sleep he squeezed it gently. That small gesture broke something inside her. He still loved her, she knew he did. He was just busy, distracted, assuming they had all the time in the world, but they didn't. And Catherine was running out of ways to make him understand without saying the words that would change everything. Catherine's quiet goodbye. The moment that shattered William. The cold came early that year, bringing with it a frost that killed the last of the garden flowers overnight. Catherine stood at the kitchen window, wrapped in a thick cardigan, watching ice crystals form delicate patterns on the glass. Inside her body, she could feel her own winter coming. The way her energy drained more quickly now. The way simple tasks left her breathless and exhausted. It had been 6 weeks since her diagnosis, and the changes were becoming harder to hide. She had lost weight, her clothes hanging looser on her frame. Dark circles shadowed her eyes no matter how much she slept. The pain in her side had grown from a whisper to a constant companion, dull and insistent, reminding her with every movement that time was truly running out. Catherine had become an expert at concealment. She wore baggy sweaters to hide her thinning body. She applied makeup carefully to mask the pallor of her skin. She smiled through waves of nausea, excused herself quietly when the pain spiked, and maintained the appearance of normal, even as everything inside her was breaking down. William still didn't notice. Or perhaps he did notice but attributed it to stress, to age, to anything except the truth. Catherine watched him watching her sometimes, a flicker of concern crossing his face before his phone would ring, or an email would ping, and his attention would shift away again. She was a puzzle he meant to solve later, when he had more time. But later was a luxury they no longer had. Dr. Morrison had called her in for a follow-up appointment. Catherine sat in his office, the same chair as before, listening as he explained that the tumor was progressing faster than expected. His words were clinical, but his eyes were kind, and that kindness was almost harder to bear than the bad news. "You need to tell your family," Dr. Morrison said gently. "You're going to need support, Catherine. This is too much to carry alone." "I will," Catherine promised. Soon. But soon kept slipping further away, always just out of reach. Every time she gathered the courage to tell William, something would happen. A crisis at work, an important deadline. He would come home so drained and stressed that adding to his burden felt cruel. So she waited, and in waiting she lost more precious days. Catherine started making mistakes. She burned dinner, something she never did. She forgot appointments. She would start sentences and lose track of what she was saying. The tumor was pressing on parts of her brain now, Dr. Morrison had explained, affecting her memory and concentration. It would only get worse. One afternoon, Catherine was grocery shopping when a wave of dizziness overtook her. She gripped the shopping cart, waiting for the world to stop spinning, but her legs gave out. She collapsed in aisle 7, surrounded by breakfast cereals, the fluorescent lights blazing overhead like small suns. Someone called an ambulance. Catherine tried to protest, saying she was fine, just a little lightheaded, but the store manager insisted. At the hospital, they ran tests and asked questions. Who should they call? Catherine gave them her sister's number instead of William's. She couldn't bear the thought of him leaving work, rushing to the hospital, demanding answers she wasn't ready to give. Her sister Margaret arrived within the hour, her face pale with worry. Margaret was 3 years older, practical and no-nonsense, the kind of person who faced problems head-on. She took one look at Catherine in the hospital bed and knew something was very wrong. "Tell me," Margaret said, pulling a chair close and taking Catherine's hand. So Catherine told her. Everything. The diagnosis, the prognosis, the fact that she hadn't told William. The words poured out of her in a rushed whisper, months of silence breaking like a dam. Margaret listened without interrupting, her grip on Catherine's hand growing tighter. "You have to tell him," Margaret said when Catherine finally fell silent. "Catherine, you have to tell him now. This is too big to keep secret." "I know," Catherine whispered. "I'm just so afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of breaking his heart. Of watching him look at me differently. Of becoming a burden instead of a wife. Of spending whatever time I have left in hospitals and sick rooms instead of living." Catherine's voice cracked. "I'm afraid of saying goodbye." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Catherine, don't you see? Every day you don't tell him is a day you're already saying goodbye, just quietly, and he doesn't even get the chance to say it back." The words hit Catherine like a physical blow because they were true. In trying to protect William, she had been stealing from him, stealing the chance to care for her, to show his love in her final months, to make memories knowing they would be the last ones. She had been so focused on sparing him pain that she hadn't considered she might be causing a different, deeper kind of pain in the end. They released Catherine from the hospital that evening with instructions to rest and follow up with her oncologist. Margaret drove her home, neither of them speaking much. When they pulled into the driveway, William's car was already there. It was barely 7 o'clock. He was home early, a rare occurrence. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Margaret asked. Catherine shook her head. "This is something I need to do alone." She found William in the living room, pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. When he saw Catherine, relief flooded his face. He quickly ended his call and rushed to her. "Where have you been? I came home early to surprise you and the house was empty." "You weren't answering your phone. I was worried." Catherine looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the worry in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the love that was still there beneath all the distraction and busyness. This man had married her 23 years ago, promising to love her in sickness and health. She had been honoring only half of that vow by staying silent. "William," she said quietly, "we need to talk." Something in her tone made him go still. He set his phone down on the coffee table, giving her his full attention in a way he hadn't in months. "What's wrong?" he asked. Catherine sat down on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, the same way she had sat in Dr. Morrison's office. William sat beside her and she could feel the heat of his body, the familiar solid presence of him. How many more times would she feel this? How many more moments did they have? "I've been keeping something from you," Catherine began, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Something important, and I'm sorry I waited so long to tell you." William's face had gone pale. "You're scaring me, Catherine." "I'm sick," she said simply. "I have a brain tumor. It's aggressive and it's terminal. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months, probably less." The words hung in the air between them. Catherine watched William's face as her meaning sank in. She saw confusion first, then disbelief, then a desperate hope that she was joking, that this was some kind of mistake. Then finally the awful understanding crashed over him like a wave. "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper. No, that can't be right." "You're fine. You've been fine." "I haven't been fine," Catherine said gently. "I've been hiding it. The doctor told me 6 weeks ago." 6 weeks? William's voice rose. "You've known for 6 weeks and you didn't tell me?" "I'm telling you now." William stood abruptly, running his hands through his hair. He paced to the window and back, his breathing rapid and shallow. "This doesn't make sense. You can't be dying. We have plans. We were going to travel when I retire. We were going to finally take that trip to Italy. We were going to grow old together." "I know," Catherine said, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I know we were." William dropped to his knees in front of her, taking her hands in his. His hands were shaking, and she realized she had never seen him shake before. William was always steady, always in control. There has to be treatment, he said urgently. We'll get a second opinion. We'll go to the best hospitals. Money doesn't matter. We'll try everything. William, no, listen to me. We'll fight this. We'll beat this. You can't give up. Catherine cupped his face in her hands, feeling the stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing how I want to spend the time I have left. And I don't want to spend it being sick from treatments that will only buy me a few extra weeks. I want to spend it living. But 6 months, William said brokenly. That's not enough. That's not nearly enough. I know, Catherine whispered. But it's what we have. William pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt his body shake with sobs, felt his tears soaking into her shoulder. He held her as if he could keep her with him through sheer force of will, as if letting go meant losing her right that moment. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other in the living room where they had celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday nights. The place where they had built a life together, not knowing how fragile it all was, how quickly it could be taken away. When William finally pulled back, his eyes were red and his face was blotchy. He looked older somehow, as if he had aged years in the span of minutes. I'm so sorry, he said. God, Catherine, I'm so sorry. I've been so busy, so focused on work, and you've been dealing with this alone. What kind of husband am I? You're the husband I chose, Catherine said. The husband I love. And I need you now, William. I need you to be here with me, really here, for whatever time we have left. William nodded, wiping his eyes. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. The promo. Catherine's quiet. Goodbye. The moment. That shattered. William. The first week after Catherine told William the truth felt like living in a snow globe that had been violently shaken. Everything familiar was still there, but everything had been disrupted, swirling in chaos before slowly, painfully settling into a new reality. William called in sick to work the next day, something Catherine had never seen him do unless he was truly ill. He spent the morning on the phone, first with Dr. Morrison, then with other doctors, specialists, oncologists across the country. He filled pages with notes, researched treatment options online, compiled lists of questions. Catherine watched him transform grief into action, a coping mechanism she recognized but knew was ultimately futile. William, she said gently after his 5th phone call. I've already made my decision about treatment. He looked up at her, his eyes still red-rimmed from crying. But you haven't heard all the options yet. There's a clinical trial in Boston, another one in California. We could at least try. Catherine sat beside him, taking the pen from his hand. I've had 6 weeks to research this. I've read everything. I've talked to doctors. The treatments will make me sick and they won't save me. They might give me a few extra weeks, but I'll spend those weeks in hospitals feeling miserable. That's not how I want to live. So you're just going to give up? There was anger in his voice now, fear disguised as frustration. I'm not giving up, Catherine said firmly. I'm choosing life over treatment. I want to be awake and alert and feeling as good as I can for as long as I can. I want to spend time with you, with Margaret, with the people I love. I want to see the spring flowers bloom. I want to have breakfast in bed and watch old movies and take walks in the park. I can't do any of that if I'm sick from chemotherapy. William's shoulders sagged. I just feel so helpless. There has to be something I can do. There is, Catherine said, squeezing his hand. You can be here with me. Really here. That's what I need most. It was easier said than done. William meant well, but decades of habits were hard to break. That afternoon, his phone rang with a work crisis. Catherine watched the internal struggle play out on his face before he declined the call. It rang again 5 minutes later. And again. Each time she saw him flinch, saw the urge to answer warring with his promise to stay present. You can take it, Catherine said finally. The world doesn't stop just because mine is ending. No, William said firmly, silencing his phone. They can manage without me. You're more important. But Catherine saw the way his eyes drifted to the dark screen, the way his fingers twitched as if reaching for it. She understood. Work had been his identity for so long, and now she was asking him to let it go, to step into a role he didn't know how to play, the role of caregiver, companion, witness to the slow goodbye. Margaret came over that evening with groceries and practical advice. While William sat with Catherine, Margaret organized the kitchen, labeled medications, created a calendar system for appointments. She was the organized one, the doer, finding purpose in the practical details. "You need to think about hospice," Margaret said as she made tea. "Not now, but eventually. They can help manage pain, provide support." The word hospice made William flinch. "She just told me yesterday. Can we not plan her death quite yet?" "I'm not planning it," Margaret said calmly. "I'm making sure she's comfortable when the time comes." That's what people who love her do. Catherine could see William struggling with this new reality. He was used to problems he could solve, deals he could close, deadlines he could meet. But death was the ultimate deadline, and no amount of hard work or clever negotiation would change it. That night they lay in bed together, both of them awake in the darkness. Catherine could feel the tension radiating from William's body. He was lying perfectly still, as if afraid that moving might hurt her. "You can touch me," Catherine said softly. "I'm not made of glass." William rolled toward her, pulling her gently against his chest. They fit together the way they always had, years of sleeping side by side, creating a perfect puzzle of limbs and comfort. But now there was a terrible awareness. In it, a consciousness of every point of contact, every breath, every heartbeat. The knowing that this was temporary, that these moments were numbered. "I keep thinking about all the time I wasted," William whispered into her hair. "All those late nights at the office, all the dinners I missed, all the times you asked me to do something and I said I was too busy. I'd give anything to have those moments back." "I know," Catherine said. "But we can't go back. We only have forward now." "How are you so calm about this?" William asked. "How are you not angry?" Catherine thought about that. She had been angry at first, angry at her body for betraying her, angry at the universe for the unfairness of it, angry at William for being so absent that she had gone through the worst of it alone. But anger took energy she no longer had to spare. "I used up my anger weeks ago," she said. "Now I'm just trying to make peace with it. Some days are harder than others." The days that followed established a new routine. William worked from home, setting up his laptop at the kitchen table so he could be near Catherine. He took calls while she rested, but he was there, present in a way he hadn't been in years. They had breakfast together every morning. They took short walks around the neighborhood when Catherine felt up to it. They watched the shows Catherine loved, but William had always been too busy to watch. But Catherine could see the strain it was taking on him. He jumped every time she winced. He watched her constantly, monitoring her movements, ready to help before she even asked. His love had transformed into hypervigilance, and while she appreciated his attention, it was also exhausting being treated like she might break at any moment. "William, I need you to relax," she said one afternoon after he had practically carried her to the bathroom. "I can still walk. I can still do things." "I'm just trying to help," he said, hurt flickering across his face. "I know you are. But I need you to let me be as independent as I can while I still can. There will come a time when I need that help, but we're not there yet." It was a delicate balance, and they were both learning as they went. How to live with dying, how to be close without suffocating, how to help without taking away dignity, how to love someone who was leaving. 2 weeks after telling William, Catherine had a good day. The pain was manageable, her energy was better, and the sun was shining in a way that made the autumn world look golden. She decided they should do something special. "Let's go to the coast," she suggested over breakfast. "Just for the day. I want to see the ocean." William hesitated. "Is that safe? What if you get tired? What if—" "William," Catherine interrupted gently. "We can't stop living because of what ifs. I feel good today. Let's not waste it." So they drove to the coast, 2 hours along winding roads with the windows down, and old songs playing on the radio. Catherine watched the landscape pass by, memorizing it all. The way the trees thinned as they approached the sea. The first glimpse of blue horizon, the salt smell that hit them even before they saw the water. They walked on the beach holding hands, their feet sinking into cold sand. The wind whipped Catherine's hair around her face, and she laughed, the sound startling both of them. It had been so long since she had laughed like that, free and unself-conscious. William stopped walking and pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "I love you," he said. "I don't say it enough, but I do. I love you so much." "I know," Catherine said. "I've always known." They sat on a driftwood log, watching the waves crash against the shore. Catherine leaned against William's shoulder, feeling the warmth of him, the solid reality of his presence. "Do you remember our honeymoon?" she asked. "We came to a beach like this." "I remember," William said. "You insisted on swimming even though the water was freezing. You said you wanted to be able to tell our grandkids we swam in the ocean on our honeymoon." Catherine felt the ache of that lost future. There would be no grandchildren now, no old-age stories, no 50th anniversary, just whatever time they had left, measured in days and weeks instead of years and decades. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For all the things we won't get to do, all the plans we made that won't happen. For leaving you." William's arm tightened around her. "Don't apologize for being sick. Don't apologize for something you can't control. Just be here with me now. That's all I need." They stayed at the beach until sunset, watching the sky transform into shades of orange and pink and purple. Catherine tried to burn it into her memory, this perfect day, this moment of peace before the hard times to come. On the drive home, Catherine fell asleep in the passenger seat, lulled by the car's motion and the day's exertion. William glanced at her often, checking that she was still breathing, still there, already learning to fear the small stillnesses, the quiet moments that would someday become permanent. When they got home, William carried her to bed, tucking her in gently. Catherine woke briefly, smiling up at him in the dim light. "Thank you for today," she murmured. "Thank you," William replied. "For every day." But even as he said it, even as he meant it, Catherine could see the shadows under his eyes, the weight settling onto his shoulders. William was trying so hard to be present, to be strong, to give her what she needed. But the strain was showing, and Catherine worried that he was breaking under the... Catherine's quiet goodbye. The moment that shattered William Winter arrived with a vengeance, bringing snow that blanketed everything in white silence. Catherine watched it fall from the living room window, wrapped in blankets despite the heat being turned up high. She was always cold now, her body unable to regulate temperature the way it used to. The tumor was progressing exactly as Dr. Morrison had warned, taking away small pieces of her with each passing week. It had been 3 months since she told William. 3 months of living in the narrow space between diagnosis and death. The good days had become rarer, separated by stretches of pain and exhaustion that left Catherine confined to bed or the couch. She had stopped going upstairs weeks ago, the effort too much. William had moved their bedroom to the ground floor guest room, rearranging furniture and bringing down her favorite things, creating a new sanctuary that felt both thoughtful and heartbreaking. Margaret visited every day now, helping with tasks Catherine could no longer manage. Bathing had become difficult. Cooking was impossible. Even reading tired her eyes after a few pages. She was becoming dependent in ways that embarrassed her, even though both Margaret and William assured her there was no shame in needing help. "It's the natural order," Margaret said one afternoon as she helped Catherine wash her hair in the sink. "You took care of Mom when she was sick. I'm taking care of you. That's what family does." But Catherine could see the toll it was taking on her sister. Margaret's face had grown thinner, lines of worry etched deeper around her eyes. And William, he was a shadow of the man he had been. He had effectively stopped working, his laptop sitting unused on the desk. His boss called occasionally, gentle conversations about medical leave and understanding. But Catherine knew William's career was essentially over. He had chosen her over everything else, and while she was grateful, she also felt the crushing weight of guilt. "You should go into the office tomorrow," Catherine suggested one evening. They were watching television, though neither of them was really paying attention. "Just for a few hours." "Get out of the house." I don't want to leave you, William said immediately. Margaret will be here. I'll be fine. What if something happens? What if you need me? Catherine turned to look at him. Really look at him. He had lost weight too, his clothes hanging loose on his frame. His hair had gone completely gray in 3 months. He barely slept, she knew, lying awake beside her listening to her breathe, afraid to close his eyes in case she slipped away while he wasn't watching. William, you're exhausting yourself. You can't be with me every single moment. You'll make yourself sick. I don't care, he said fiercely. I wasted years not being present. I'm not wasting another day. There was no arguing with him, and truthfully, Catherine didn't have the energy. She leaned against him, feeling the rapid beating of his heart, and wished she could take away his pain as easily as he wanted to take away hers. The next morning brought a crisis. Catherine woke before dawn with pain so severe she couldn't breathe through it. She tried to stay quiet, not wanting to wake William, but a groan escaped her lips. William was instantly alert, fumbling for the lamp, his face panicked in the sudden light. What's wrong? What hurts? Everything, Catherine gasped. It's bad today. William called Dr. Morrison, his hands shaking as he held the phone. The doctor prescribed stronger pain medication, talked about hospice care, about making Catherine comfortable. Each word was another nail in the coffin of their hope. The new medication helped, but it also made Catherine foggy and disconnected. She drifted in and out of consciousness, losing track of time. Sometimes she woke and it was morning. Sometimes it was night. Sometimes William was sitting beside her, holding her hand. Sometimes Margaret was there, reading aloud from one of Catherine's favorite books. On one of her clearer days, Catherine asked William to bring her the box from the back of her closet. The one with the letters she had written. Her hands were too weak now to write more, and she wanted to make sure he knew they existed. What are these? William asked, opening the box to find dozens of sealed envelopes. Letters, Catherine said. I wrote them before I told you. When I was carrying it alone. Some are for you. Some are for Margaret. Some are for people I wanted to say goodbye to properly. William picked up one addressed to him, his name in Catherine's increasingly shaky handwriting. Can I read them now? Not yet, Catherine said. After. They're for after. She saw understanding dawn on his face, saw him realize she was talking about after she was gone. He put the letter back carefully, closing the box as if it contained something fragile and precious. I don't want to think about after, William said, his voice breaking. I know, but we have to. There are things we need to talk about. They had been avoiding these conversations, dancing around practicalities because acknowledging them made death too real. But Catherine could feel time pressing down on her now, heavy and insistent. There were things William needed to know. I want to be cremated, Catherine said. No funeral. Just a small gathering of close friends and family. And I want my ashes scattered at the beach where we went that day. The day after I told you. That was a perfect day. William was crying openly now, not trying to hide it. I can't talk about this. You have to, Catherine said gently. I need to know you'll be okay. How can I be okay without you? You will be. Not at first, but eventually. You'll heal and move forward and find joy again. That's what I want for you. I don't want anyone else. I'm not saying you need to find someone else. I'm just saying don't stop living when I stop. Promise me that, William. Promise me you'll keep living. He couldn't speak, but he nodded, tears streaming down his face. The hospice nurse started coming daily. Her name was Patricia, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and gentle hands. She showed William how to adjust Catherine's position to minimize bed sores, how to help with medications, what to watch for as the end approached. Each lesson was torture for William, but he paid attention, taking notes, asking questions, determined to care for Catherine himself as much as possible. Christmas came and went quietly. Margaret brought over a small tree, decorating it with ornaments that held memories. Catherine mostly slept through the day, waking briefly to watch William open the gift she had prepared months ago. It was a photo album she had made, filled with pictures from their life together. Each page had captions in her handwriting, remembering the moment, the feeling, the love. William sat on the edge of her bed, turning pages slowly, tears falling on the plastic covering. This is beautiful, he whispered. I wanted you to have something to remember, Catherine said. Not just the end. Remember all of it. January brought the sense that time was truly running out. Catherine could feel her body shutting down in increments. Food made her sick. Water was hard to swallow. She slept more than she was awake. Dr. Morrison and Patricia both agreed she probably had days left, maybe a week. On what would be one of her last lucid days, Catherine asked William to help her to the window. She wanted to see outside, to feel sunshine on her face even if it was through glass. William carried her there, settling her in a chair with blankets tucked around her. The world outside was beautiful. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, covering everything in pristine white. Icicles hung from the eaves, catching sunlight and throwing rainbow prisms across the room. Catherine watched a cardinal land on a bare branch, its red feathers brilliant against the monochrome landscape. "It's beautiful," she murmured. William knelt beside her chair, his hand covering hers. "Not as beautiful as you." Catherine smiled at that. She knew she looked terrible now, all sharp angles and sallow skin, her eyes sunken and shadowed. But William looked at her the way he had on their wedding day, with love and wonder and complete devotion. "William," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something important." "What is it?" "I forgive you. For being absent, for prioritizing work, for not seeing me slowly disappear. I forgive all of it. Catherine, let me finish. I forgive you, and I need you to forgive yourself. The past months, the way you've been here for me, the way you've loved me through this, that's what matters. That's what I'll carry with me." "Carry with you where?" William asked, then immediately shook his head. "Sorry, I don't want to think about you going anywhere." "I know you don't, but I am going somewhere, William. I don't know where exactly. But I'm not afraid anymore. I used to be, but I'm not now. And I need you to not be afraid either. How can I not be afraid of losing you?" "You won't lose me." "Not really. I'll be in every sunrise you watch, every cup of tea you make, every time you hear our favorite song. I'll be in your memories and your heart. Death ends a life, not a relationship." They sat together at the window for hours, watching the light change, watching shadows grow long across the snow. Catherine dozed sometimes, waking to find William still there, still watching over her with fierce devotion. That night, as he helped her back to bed, Catherine felt a strange peace settling over her. The pain was still there, but somehow more distant. Her body felt lighter, as if it was already beginning to let go. "Stay with me," she whispered as William tucked the blankets around her. "Always," he promised, climbing into bed beside her, careful not to jostle her. Catherine rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong. "Shh." Catherine's quiet goodbye, the moment that shattered William. The morning came gray and cold, with snow falling softly outside the window. Catherine opened her eyes slowly, taking a moment to remember where she was, who she was. The fog in her mind was thicker now, the medication and the tumor working together to blur the edges of reality. William was already awake beside her, watching her with those worried eyes that had become his permanent expression. She tried to smile at him to reassure him, but even that small gesture felt exhausting. "Good morning," she whispered, her voice thin and scratchy. "Good morning, my love," William replied, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "How do you feel?" How did she feel? Catherine took inventory of her body, something that had become more difficult each day. There was pain, but it was distant, muffled by medication. There was weakness, bone deep and profound. But there was also a strange lightness, as if gravity had loosened its hold on her. "Tired," she said finally. "So tired." William's face crumpled, but he fought to compose himself. "Do you want breakfast? Patricia will be here soon to help." Catherine shook her head slightly. The thought of food made her nauseous. She hadn't eaten anything substantial in days, surviving on ice chips and sips of water. Her body didn't need fuel anymore. It was winding down, preparing for its final rest. "Just water," she said. "Please." William helped her drink, supporting her head, patient as she took tiny sips. Everything took so much effort now. Every swallow, every breath, every moment of consciousness was work. Margaret arrived mid-morning, her eyes red as if she had been crying before she came. She sat on the other side of Catherine's bed, taking her hand and holding it gently. "Hey, little sister," Margaret said, forcing cheerfulness into her voice. "How are you doing today?" "Leaving soon," Catherine said simply. She had lost the energy for pretense, for the polite lies people told to make others feel better. Margaret's composure broke. "Catherine, don't say that." "It's true," Catherine said. "I can feel it." "It's okay, Margaret. I'm ready." The three of them sat together in silence, holding hands, connected by love and grief and the unbearable weight of goodbye. Patricia came and went quietly, checking vitals, adjusting medication, speaking in low tones to William about what to expect. Catherine heard fragments of their conversation, hours, maybe days. "Keep her comfortable. Let her go peacefully." The day passed in a haze. Catherine drifted in and out of consciousness, losing track of time. Sometimes she opened her eyes to find William beside her, reading aloud from her favorite book. Sometimes it was Margaret, singing softly the lullabies their mother used to sing. Sometimes she was alone but not lonely, floating in a space between worlds. She had moments of clarity scattered through the fog. In one of them she saw her younger self, newly married, laughing in William's arms in their tiny first apartment. In another she was in her mother's kitchen, learning to bake bread, flour dusting her nose. Memories came like dreams, or perhaps dreams came like memories. The boundary between past and present had dissolved. That evening, as the sun set in streaks of pink and gold visible through the window, Catherine woke to find William curled up beside her, his arm draped protectively across her waist. She could feel his breath on her neck, warm and alive. How many nights had they slept like this? Thousands. And this would be among the last. "William," she whispered. He stirred immediately. "I'm here." "What do you need?" "Nothing," Catherine said. "Just wanted to hear your voice. Tell me something." "Tell me about the first time you saw me." William shifted so he could see her face, his eyes searching hers. "You were in the library, sitting by the window. The sunlight was in your hair, and you were so focused on your book you didn't notice everyone around you. I thought you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I was too nervous to talk to you for weeks." Catherine smiled faintly, remembering. "You finally asked to borrow a pen." "I had 3 pens in my bag," William admitted. "I just needed an excuse." "I knew," Catherine said. "I thought it was sweet." They lay together, sharing memories, filling the room with the story of their life together. The awkward first date. The proposal that went wrong when William dropped the ring in a fountain. Their wedding, small and perfect. The house they bought together. Every fight, every reconciliation, every ordinary, extraordinary moment that made up a marriage. As night fell, Catherine felt herself slipping further away. The room seemed dimmer, sounds more distant. She could still feel William's hand holding hers, but it felt like he was on the other side of a river, and the river was getting wider. "William," she said, struggling to form words, "I need you to promise me something." "Anything," William said immediately. "Live," Catherine whispered. "Really live. Don't just exist without me. Find joy again. Let yourself heal. And when you think of me, smile. Remember the good parts. Don't let grief define you." "I don't know how to do that," William said, his voice breaking completely. "You'll learn," Catherine said. "You're stronger than you know. And I'll be with you. Not the way I am now, but in other ways. I'll be the wind in the trees. The first flowers of spring. The stars you see at night. Look for me there and you'll find me." William was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook the bed. Margaret had returned, standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. The room was full of grief, heavy and thick, but also full of love. So much love it felt like it might burst through the walls. Catherine wanted to comfort them, to make this easier, but she had no strength left. Her eyes were closing despite her efforts to keep them open. The pull toward sleep, toward that final rest, was becoming impossible to resist. "I love you," she managed to say, her voice barely audible. "Both of you. Thank you for everything." "I love you too," William said, pressing his forehead against hers. "I love you so much, Catherine. I'll love you forever." "Forever," Catherine echoed. And then the darkness rose up to claim her. She didn't die that night. She lingered for 2 more days, but she never truly woke again. Her breathing became shallow and irregular. Her body grew cold despite the blankets piled around her. William never left her side, holding her hand, talking to her, playing her favorite music, creating a cocoon of love for her to die in. Margaret sat with them, providing strength when William faltered. Patricia came and went, ensuring Catherine wasn't in pain, that her transition was as peaceful as possible. On the 3rd morning, as dawn broke pale and quiet outside the window, Catherine took her last breath. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. One moment she was breathing, and the next she wasn't. The stillness that followed was absolute. William felt it immediately. The shift, the absence, the terrible finality of it. He looked at Catherine's face, now peaceful and free from pain, and something inside him shattered completely. The sound that came from him was barely human, a wail of pure grief that seemed to come from his very soul. He gathered Catherine in his arms, holding her as if he could somehow breathe life back into her, as if love alone could reverse death. Margaret was there immediately, wrapping her arms around both of them, crying her own tears of loss. Patricia came quietly, checking for a pulse she knew wouldn't be there, officially noting the time. 7:43 in the morning. The moment Catherine left the world and William's life cracked open, the days that followed were a blur. Funeral home, cremation, calls to friends and family, a small gathering in their living room exactly as Catherine had requested. People shared memories and cried and brought casseroles that William didn't eat. He moved through it all like a ghost, functioning but not really present. Margaret stayed with him, refusing to let him be alone. She found the box of letters and gave them to the appropriate people. William's stack was thick, 23 letters in total, one for each year they had been married. Margaret suggested he wait to read them, but William opened the first one that night. The letter was dated from 2 months before Catherine told him about her diagnosis. Her handwriting was still strong then, not yet affected by the tumor. She wrote about ordinary things. A funny thing that happened at the grocery store, a memory from their honeymoon. How proud she was of him even when he was too busy to notice. How much she loved him even in his absence. At the end, she wrote, "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry I left you. But please don't let my death become your prison. I loved you too much to want that. Live, William. Live fully and joyfully and know that I'm cheering you on from wherever I am." William read all 23 letters that night, sitting on their bed surrounded by Catherine's words. He cried until he had no tears left, until his body was wrung out and hollow. But somewhere in the pain there was also a strange comfort. Catherine had left him breadcrumbs to follow out of grief. Instructions for healing written in love. The months that followed were the hardest of William's life. He went through the motions of living, but everything felt colorless and flat. The house was full of Catherine's absence. Her coffee mug still sat by the sink. Her sweater was draped over the back of the couch. Her books waited on the nightstand. William couldn't bring himself to move any of it, but slowly, painfully, he began to heal. He went to a grief support group. He started seeing a therapist. He let Margaret drag him out of the house for walks and coffee dates. He opened one letter each week, letting Cather,